Hi everyone, and welcome back again to Newegg TV. My name is Paul, and we have JJ here once again. He is the ASUS Senior Technical Marketing Specialist, and he is here to talk to us a little bit about UEFI.
Yep.
Now, JJ, if you will indulge me, I've learned a lot just in the past few minutes, and I'm going to try to rattle this all off here and sound as intelligent as I possibly can. UEFI is the successor to BIOS. BIOS is what has been used in computers right when you start it up at the very beginning, when all the power goes through there and recognizes all the components, gets you booted up and started into your operating system. UEFI is the new version of that. It's been a long time coming. Have I messed up at all so far?
UEFI.
UEFI, I'm sorry. UEFI, which stands for
User Extendable Firmware Interface.
Extendable Firmware Interface. So we're trading up from BIOS to UEFI, and there's some benefits to that inherent. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a little use case scenario. We have the ASUS version of UEFI going on here with our P8P67 Pro motherboard, and we've got a little test bench set up. JJ is going to take us through and show us a lot of the new benefits of using this new UEFI as opposed to the old BIOS. And before we get started with that, just to go over what we have set up here, again, the P8P67 Pro motherboard. This is a Sandy Bridge platform. We have an Intel Core i5.
Core i7.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's, yeah, Core i7. We have an Intel Core i7 2600K. The K means it's overclockable. We're also having an ASUS GTX 580. We're running the very popular Cooler Master Hyper 212 Plus, so we're going to show you what we can do with overclocking on air with this system. We have a Crucial C300 SSD running the operating system, and we have 8 gigs of Corsair Dominator DDR3 memory. Did I forget anything?
I think that rounds us out there.
Oh, we got a 1,350 watt power supply, which is way more than we need, but... So anyway, so JJ.
Yes.
What's so great about UEFI?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things. I mean, first and foremost, the biggest change that most is immediate is it's going to be more graphical. But outside of that, there's some base fundamental changes. For one, it allows us to have more addressing space. So this gives us the ability to be able to add additional functionality, maybe different types of interface functions, certain types of graphics, icons, different types of implementations such as that. From an end user perspective, there's not too much that's going to change or that they're going to have to worry about when they're using the board. Everything's pretty much transparent. The biggest plus that they'll get is, of course, for the newest crop of 3 terabyte drives, everything is functional. You're going to connect this drive, you can boot to it, you can use it as a slave drive, it doesn't matter. It's out of the box, ready and supported, so it's good to go. When it gets to actually utilizing the BIOS, this is where some changes have come into play, and this is where we spend a lot of our time taking back feedback and redesigning a BIOS interface for this new standard. So here we can see we've got the Pro board booted up here, and we're in the BIOS. The first thing you see is that the initial page doesn't look anything like a normal BIOS screen.
It's a lot prettier.
Yeah, yeah. So we spent a lot of time on here to try and give a quick and easy kind of one-stop shop for information, some overclocking, and also boot functionality. So as we can see here, we've got the time, the date, the board, the BIOS revision, the CPU, the amount of memory that's populated, the build date. So quick piece of information all right there, readily available. We have full mouse control here, so we can go ahead and select options. So here we have the CPU and the motherboard temperature defined. Voltages are supplied as far as information regarding the CPU voltage and the power supply rails, and then also CPU fans. So as actively, if you were to put more fans on the power headers, you'll actually go ahead and see what the rotation rate is. So that gives us additional information as well.
Very nice.
And now moving over here into the system performance section, this section we've cultivated for people that are looking for a quick and easy way on overclocking the system or getting more performance.
And is this this particular section here unique to the ASUS version?
Correct. This entire interface, which we call the easy mode, has been entirely customized exclusively for our boards.
Okay, so you're not necessarily going to see this exact graphical interface if you're not using ASUS.
And as we discussed earlier, there might even be other boards that are on the market that might not even have UEFI at all. So we're really proud to not only have UEFI across the board, but a special graphical interface as well to give you some other options. So our first option here is we have a special power saving mode. This works with our EPU dedicated hardware chip that's on the motherboard and actually will undervolt the processor, allowing you to get even lower temperatures and less voltage being consumed by the CPU, so helping to extend the life and the overall efficiency of everything that's being run on the platform. It'll actually reduce anywhere between about 30 to as much as 70 millivolts. So we've done a lot of testing. It works with the hardware controllers on the board. It's all made real time. Quick and easy. All the user has to do is just click that button, hit F10, or save, and that's it. They're good to go.
Saves a bit on your power bill, I'd imagine?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of wattage, it's going to be about 5 to 10 watts on average. And then we have the normal profile, which is just going to keep pretty much everything stock, just like the way that Intel's defined all the parameters. The next one is an optimal setting. So we maintain stock, power saving profiles, all the normal things that you inherently get when the BIOS is in its default parameters, but we've increased some defined options for a quick and easy overclock. So by clicking this button, users are going to go ahead and have a predefined overclock of about 4.5 to almost 4.5 gigahertz, all just to click a button. So I would just need to click this, and then I could just go to Advanced, Save Changes, reboot my system, and boot in at 4.5.
And is the profile for that going to vary depending on what CPU you have installed?
Yes, it's going to vary depending on the CPU. We've done a lot of testing over on this, though. Close to about 300 CPUs were internally validated, and we checked everything to make sure that the ranges that we were looking for are going to comfortably work and not have any issues. And these were also all validated on the Intel retail heatsink. So while we got a fantastic cooler here that's capable of more, which we'll show later, you don't have to worry about having to have a higher performing part to ensure that.
So quick and easy way to seems like you're going to really maximize the hardware that you have installed, but you're not really going to be pushing it as far as it can go to where you're going to be, maybe dealing with temperature issues or, power availability. That sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of the variables that come in with overclocking. The next option here is something that a lot of users have asked for, is they start to get more and more devices that they can boot from, whether it's eSATA, whether it's USB 3, whether it's hot swap, serial ATA hard drives. They want an easy way to be able to define what is their bootable device. So here we have a clickable boot device priority option. As you can see, I have two options here, and so essentially I can go ahead and click on the option that I want to become my primary boot device, and if I had more devices connected, all I've got to do is click it and drag it to the new desired location. So a really easy way to access that.
So drag and drop to rearrange the devices you have for boot priority.
Correct.
It's amazing that it's been so long since we've been booting using BIOS, and we finally have that functionality. We can drag and drop
Yeah. So
our boot devices.
It's a very convenient option. So that
Very
kind of
nice.
gives us a little bit of an overview on at least the easy mode, and one of the biggest changes that you're going to see when using a UEFI BIOS or BIOS replacement. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and jump into the normal operating mode, which has the more advanced options, and what are going to be some of the changes that users are going to expect on ASUS motherboards when you're working with a K-series processor.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and enter into the advanced interface, which once again, as we can see, we can go ahead and execute with a mouse click too. And here we have our setup, and as users have come to know, AI Tweaker is really where we house a lot of all the special settings that relate to overclocking. So that's where we're going to go. Right off the bat, you can see one important feature that we've implemented is a little yellow symbol, which gives us target speeds and DRAM speeds. So as we make adjustments to that, the new frequencies are going to be automatically highlighted there. So nobody has to think about it like a calculator, and think about, well, if I do this multiplier, this value, what's that corresponding value going to be?
It'll just show you the result right there.
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and go to the AI Overclock Tuner and go to Manual. And we can see here BCLK frequency is adjustable. An important note, though, is that there's been a huge architectural change with the new Sandy Bridge series of processors. Users can't overclock the way that you used to, where you might have adjusted the system bus clock, which used to be FSB or B clock. Now you have a slight amount of B clock variation depending on your CPU, maybe up to about 105, 106, maybe 107, but it's quite small. Most of the overclocking is going to take place all in your turbo multiplier. That's going to allow you to reach the new frequencies that are achievable. So it is important to keep in mind that you don't necessarily want to just jump off to putting in 200 in there, because the system won't respond to that.
So keep in mind, you can't get much out of the B clock with Sandy Bridge.
Yeah. But you can get a whole lot of room out of the actual turbo multiplier.
All right, so let's check that out.
So here under our turbo ratio, we have a couple of options. And the really nice option is that with our new DigiPlus VRM and our new AI Suite 2, we actually give you the ability to do this essentially all within the operating system. You can adjust load light calibration, switching frequency, phase utilization, the core voltages, and all those variables. And you could define that option by saying all cores can be adjusted in OS. but we're going to go ahead and just do this from the UEFI.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and say in the BIOS, and we can see here we have per core count. So we're going to go ahead and try 4.8, which I think is a pretty nice number, seeing as historically, previous air cooling used to be topping out at about like 4, maybe 4.2 gigahertz.
4.8 is a pretty significant overclock with air cooling.
So this is important to consider though. As you can see here, it's automatically adjusted and told us now that our new turbo mode frequency is 4.8. And why it denotes turbo frequency is because once you get into Windows, you'll still actually have speed step enabled because it's using turbo. So you'll still actually see it go up and down, where sometimes previous overclock mechanisms would leave you at a fixed frequency.
So it's only going to actually jump up to that clock speed that you've set when it actually needs it, not when it's just idling.
Correct. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and quickly define some other parameters. We've got some great Corsair memory here, so we're going to go ahead and put 1600. We'll go ahead and adjust those timings quickly. As you can see here, we've got a really nice layout in terms of how to adjust those and the timings readout. And from here, we're going to go to some of the new, more advanced options that we have in our digital VRM. Because of its implementation, we're giving you a huge level of control. For load line calibration, historically it was either on or off, maybe a 2-step option. We're now giving you a 5-stage load level calibration, so you can really compensate for however much droop that you want or you don't want. So it's very flexible. The switching frequency also is entirely end-user adjustable, so as users are going to try to ramp to higher and higher frequencies, they can correspondingly bump up the switching frequency to help drive and sustain higher clock frequencies. This is imperative, especially when you're using higher workload programs that are really putting a lot of stress on the CPU. But since our board is so good, we're just going to go ahead and leave that at auto.
Okay.
Phase, we're just going to go ahead and decide to use our full phase array. So we're going to go ahead and set it to extreme. And as we previously noted before, we had that T-probe circuit that kind of does all that automatic temperature control for the phase count. Mm-hmm. We can actually also have this perform automatic compensation not on temperature, but based off of what's called current. So the amount of power that's being supplied to those phases, we can have it compensate evenly across all of them. So since we're driving a higher clock frequency, that's what we're going to do. Outside of that, we're just going to go for a moderate voltage, 1.4, and our DRAM at 1.65. Outside of that, we're not going to adjust anything else. We're even going to keep our fan profile set to standard, so silent essentially. And we're going to boot up and see what 4.8 gigahertz looks like.
That didn't seem too tough.
No, yeah, definitely. We've spent a huge amount of time developing a BIOS that's been very smooth, that works very well at auto settings, so that users don't have to do too much to be able to get a lot more performance out of their CPU. Even working without even going into the UEFI interface and using the manual options, we have, as I noted, that easy mode option, but we also have a special option within the operating system that works with our TPU chip. This is called auto tuning. We first introduced this on P55, and what this does is actually a full real-time auto overclock process. It'll actually automatically adjust the B clock, core voltages, automatically adjust the turbo multiplier, and also run a full stability test, all real time, making adjustments for you. It's a process that takes somewhere between about 5 to 7 minutes, and at the end, depending on your CPU and the rest of your components, will get you somewhere between probably about 4.6 to 4.7 gigahertz.
It's very nice, especially that you're actually putting it under load during that whole process to actually determine what a nice good overclock is.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure that, if we're going to do an auto overclocking algorithm, that's actually tested and validated. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of the guys, they're real gearheads and enthusiasts, the actual algorithm they were using is a special internally developed kind of prime integer. So it does hit that CPU quite hard to really test the stability.
Oh, very nice.
So we can see we booted up, no problems. So we're going to go ahead and open up CPU-Z and check out our core operating frequency. And as we can see here, right now we're gotten in idle mode. So if we go ahead and open up something, so let's take, for instance, a stress test, or we could do Cinebench. Do you have a preference?
Let's try a stress test, but as you were mentioning before, that since it is speed step enabled, mm-hmm. right now we're running at 1.6 gigahertz.
Correct.
And,
so
then it's only jumping up to the 4.8 when it's actually putting the CPU under load. So
correct. So we get kind of the best of both worlds. Is that for the first time you can really pretty much keep all what's called your C states or your power states, but still also get the benefit of getting an overclock. So we'll go ahead and you can see here 1.6.6. We're going to go ahead now, utilize all our cores. You can see it's immediately gone ahead and ramped up to 100% across our 8 threads, and now we've automatically ramped up to 4.8 gigahertz.
There it is.
Super easy way to overclock your system and get a significant level of performance. And with P67 and Sandy Bridge, at an overclock state, you get to performance levels that even beat out actually entry-level X58 based platforms. So a whole lot of performance that can really be easily accessed.
That is especially impressive when you consider that the power draw is less.
Yes, and also the temperatures. As we saw right here, we were just hitting it under load, but we can see that our temperatures are floating, about 34, 35 C when we're idling, and even under peak load, we're generally staying under 60 degrees.
Man,
So
that's chilly compared to a lot of
yeah,
a lot of especially running at 4.8 gigahertz.
yeah, it's quite impressive. And jumping in here into the AI Suite 2 interface, this has kind of been something that we're really proud of. This is going to give us some of those options that I was talking about. And the big change is that historically we used to have a whole bunch of different applications. So we had our PC probe, and we had our AI Suite, and we got a lot of feedback that nobody wanted to kind of be Batman. Nobody wanted to have 7 different programs all active at one time. Mm-hmm. Now you can actually have all these applications all in one tab and one interface, and depending on the user, they can even make it modular. So let's say if all I was interested in was maybe overclocking, I could disable a lot of these other functions and just keep the ones that I want. So let's say I just want Turbo V Evo, Digi Plus VRM, PC probe, and sensor recorder. I can just hit apply. It'll go ahead and close out of the application, unload those other modules, and then reload just the ones you want. So you can make it as lean as you want or as feature rich as you want. So you really got a lot of flexibility. So you can see here we have less options, and if we go to our new Digi Plus, this is a big first. Because we're using a digital VRM, the AI Suite 2, the TPU chip on the board, which is helping us make all these hardware changes from the operating system, allows us to have an unprecedented level of control. For the first time, we can adjust load line calibration, so we can compensate for voltage droop, real time in the OS, OCP, so that's the amount of current that the VRM is able to handle before it shuts down, switching frequency, which is that driving strength in terms of the frequency that's helping to drive all the settings that we're providing for our overclock, the phase count, and even that T-probe functionality. It's all real-time accessible in the OS, no need to reboot. It all happens real-time on the fly.
So you can adjust the overclock frequency, you can get into all of those details for your overclocking spec.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
You can do that all from within the operating system.
Yeah, definitely. We even have other options in here. If we go into our actual Turbo V option within the BIOS, within the AI Suite 2 application, we can also continue to adjust the actual turbo multiplier as well as actually the B clock. So as we can see here, we have our B clock frequency, the core voltage, and even CPU ratio. So we could go ahead and either apply more voltage. If we hit on here, it tells us that the system would need to restart. And from there, once it reboots, or if we would have set that option to just make the adjustment in Windows, we could actually just start adjusting the multiplier on the fly. So we could boot up at 4.8, and let's say we wanted to try to get to 4.9, 5. It's all easy and all on the fly.
All right, so that's a great first look and introduction to the new features available in AI Suite 2, all available from within the operating system.
Correct, and present on our entire lineup. So all the way down to the entry level, all the way up to our flagship, they all feature the options that you see here.
So even on the entry level board, you still get that.
Yeah, even on our P8P67 standard board, you still have the digital VRM, the auto tuning options, the load line calibration. That's all available to you.
Perfect. Now you were mentioning the auto tuning feature that was available. Can we check that out? Maybe reboot back to stock and see how it goes with running that.
Yeah, sure, not a problem.
All right, so JJ has rebooted. We have set everything back to stock speeds. By the way, the stock speed for this Core i7 2600K is 3.4 gigahertz is the base clock speed, and 3.8 gigahertz is the turbo boost speed. So we're gone back to that, and let's take a look at how the auto-tune features.
We're going to go back into AI Suite 2. One quick thing I want to know before we actually get into the auto-tuning portion, one of the things that we're proud to introduce also was, like we talked about earlier, all our boards essentially offer Bluetooth modules incorporated on them. And with those Bluetooth modules, we have an option that's called BT Go. which is an easy way that essentially users can access either monitoring information for overclocking purposes. They want to see maybe the temperatures, the voltages, things along those lines. But they also have the quick and easy way of that they can go into the ASUS 2 app, search for BT-enabled device, and also do data transfer.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's a very easy way of working with the system.
I'm guessing particularly if you have, say, Bluetooth smartphone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you've got either photos or video, or even, like I said, just a large address library contact list, and you just want to be able to sync it on there.
Very nice.
So we're going to go ahead and open up the ASUS 2. We've got a big button that says Auto Tuning. All we've got to do is click on it. It's going to open up the Turbo V Evo interface, and it'll give us two options. There's a fast option, which is pretty much almost immediate. It's going to apply some special processing settings to the TPU chip, reboot, and give us that frequency, which is going to be similar to that other initial easy mode frequency of about 4.4 or 4.5 gigahertz. We're going to go for the extreme option, as that's the one that gives us the highest level overclock and does more of that tuning process.
Okay.
So from there, it'll automatically exit out. From here, the rest on, it's entirely a hands-free process. What it will do is it'll go ahead and shut down the system, start to work with the TPU chip, make some initial adjustments, and what we'll see once it gets into the operating system is it's going to start to make real-time adjustments to the multiplier and to the voltages.
So this is a reboot. So all of the auto-tuning features actually take place within the operating system, but it's going to reboot right now to set up for the auto-tuning?
Yeah, that's correct. And while it's being executed from within the operating system, the process in itself is still actually all hardware-driven. We're just essentially interfacing it from the operating system. Without actually the TPU chip on the board, we couldn't actually execute this process. So it's not just like we're applying profiles, it's actually a full normal real-time process that's occurring. So it is actually working with the BIOS and making all these adjustments, just like if I was in the BIOS and adjusting the multiplier and the voltages and any of these corresponding settings. And even depending on the memory configurations that you have, it can even actually overclock your memory as well for you.
Oh.
Yeah. But we spent a lot of time really trying to balance all the aspects in terms of power efficiency, the cooling, and all the requirements that go along with this. And the thing that we're most proud of is that there's not a lot of aggressive overvolting here that occurs. It doesn't use any type of load line calibration or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about that it's going to be applying too much to your CPU. It all works within a very effective measure, and it won't turn off any of the power saving settings either. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a high level overclock, but while keeping everything very efficient.
And it's all automatic.
Yeah. So you can see here that it's gone ahead and booted up, and it's already now given us a 4.4 gigahertz overclock with a small adjustment to the actual B clock. And now it's just giving us a countdown timer, letting us know, at this point, are you happy with this? This is a pretty big improvement already from 3.8, right?
Yeah,
but we can go, of course, a bit higher. And so we're going to say, let's go ahead and let it go further. So we're not going to click the stop button, and we're just going to let it go ahead and continue forward so we can see at least what it looks like. And then from there, we can get to the real interesting stuff and go to maybe Maximus 4 Extreme, see if we can maybe break 5 gigahertz.
That sounds like a good idea.
I think that sounds pretty cool too. So as you can see right here, it's now gone ahead and started the actual stability tests. At this point right here, you can see the fan's already ramping up. It's actually, look at that, applying a full real-time load to all the CPU cores. This is a full dynamic real-time process. There's no profiles occurring here. We're doing full stability tests. We started to ramp the multiplier. We've bounced up to 4.5 gigahertz, now getting ready to go to 4.6. So you can see we're offering a really robust functionality, very easy for the user without having to do anything manually.
So it's going to keep nudging that up and running the stability tests
until it gets to a point that says, okay, you know what, per these predefined parameters for safety, for temperature, for voltage, all these ranges, this is what we feel is a real high level quality overclock, and you're good to go.
Very nice. Yeah. Looks like we're already to
4.7. Yeah. So
that's not bad at all.
Thank you.
That's almost 1 gigahertz full overclock right now.
Yep.
And
4.8. It's going to continue to ramp up. So pretty impressive implementation.
That's awesome. We can just sit here like this and say, we're overclocking.
Yeah. Hands-free.
Right there. All right, guys. The system has just now rebooted. The auto-tune utility has automatically gone in, run stability tests. We're at 4.84 gigahertz right now. That is a 1 gigahertz overclock from the stock 3.8 gigahertz that the turbo boost from the Core i7 2600K gives us stock. So that's a very great example of the ASUS utilities at work there, doing your overclocking for you. I know there's those of you who will want to go in and do it yourself, but there's plenty of options for that as well. But that's a great example of what you can get, not only with the Sandy Bridge CPUs, but also using the ASUS motherboard solutions as well. JJ, thank you very much again for stopping by and showing us all of this fantastic hardware. And for those of you at home, thanks for watching Newegg TV. We'll see you next time.